Beyond truth and lies are the stories without answers. Welcome to Dragon's Bread. Most of us have to imagine monsters. We think of them in silence or amuse ourselves briefly, and then lock them away in dark rooms in our heads. But what if the monster found you? And instead of a twisted beast, you saw a person that looked like everybody else. What would you do then? Well, this is Zack Hughes' Moment of Truth story. And this is the episode we're titling Black Day Green.
I grew up in Fort Worth, Texas, in a small little subdivision called Wedgwood. So I grew up in what I would consider a normal family. They're great people, but they weren't big pushers. So I was never really great at anything. Wasn't great at baseball. Wasn't the valedictorian. Wasn't that guy. So it was just a normal day. It was in the morning, I think around 9:30. I was in 10th grade, so I think I was just 16. I was like, what's going on? Why are all these people getting all crazy? And Mr. Moore was my history teacher that I was walking into. So he's wheeling in the TV, and I'm like, cool, movie day. And he's like,
no, not movie day. Sit down, Zach.
So he turns on the news, and the whole thing's there, and he's super shook up. And he said, we
need to pay attention to what's going on right now.
It took a while for us because we were still kids. And we finally started figuring out what was going on. And all my friends, we were like, we're going to get drafted. And so my friends that were seniors, because they were about to be 18, they were excited. Most of them were excited. And I was like, well, we're only 16. We're going to have to stick around for another 2 years.
What are you carrying around at that point that kind of maybe positioned you to see that as an opportunity to step up rather than to run away or blame?
Yeah, so I think it's important to back up a little bit here. My first original call to action was a situation that we had in our neighborhood. September 15th, 1999. See you at the poll day for Christian Fellowship. So every Wednesday we would meet before school at the flagpole, and we'd kind of do our little Christian Fellowship thing. And then that evening at the local church, we'd go and it would just be a youth-only service. I just turned 14, sitting there going through the youth service that evening, and a guy by the name of Larry Gene Ashcroft came in with a couple pistols and a pipe bomb and just started taking people out.
47-year-old Larry Gene Ashcroft fantasized about being one of the police.
This was 6 months after Columbine. The president called, a couple other things happened. At the end of the day, my cousin John was dating this girl, Cassie. She passed away.
She's waiting for the hummingbirds to fly by, sitting peacefully in the morning light, asking nothing in return. She's waiting for the hummingbirds to fly by with the most beautiful smile. With the most beautiful smile.
My grandfather was a World War II vet, and then me and him sat down, discussed that at length. Two of my uncles went to Vietnam. They were still around when 9/11 happened, and we sat down and we discussed that at length. But when it 100% clicked for me is when I was in grad school and I was about to finish up, and the 19th Special Forces Group is there, which is the reserve component for the Special Forces. And I met a guy who was Green Beret. And I was like, holy shit, dude, you're Green Beret? And he was like, yeah, man. And I was like, well, I want to do that.
So what happens next?
About a year and a half into Special Forces training, when I was almost done, I got a phone call from a previous ex-girlfriend in Austin. And she told me that she had our baby and that she hasn't told me in the last 2 years.
Holy moly. Where are you when you get the news?
I'm actually in the qualification course in the field.
squad and unit tactics, which is a very high stress, very failable portion of the qualification course. 60% of our class failed it. And it was the Army MPs coming and saying,
"We have a court order for a DNA test that we need you to take."
I was like, what? And it was also anonymous. I had no idea what was going on. I had a girlfriend who I'd been strictly with for almost 2 years. I got my phone after we came back from the field. It had been a month. I was like, hey, I just want to let you know, here's the situation. This is who it was. It was an ex. It was before you. I now have a responsibility to my daughter, period. And it goes above all else. So for the second time in our relationship of only a couple years, I was saying, if you want to break up, I understand. First time being when I told her I was going to join the Army and go be a Green Beret. There was a real struggle for her. She was very into the specific dates of these occurrences, which was a very close line. She said, I've already decided that I'm going to be with you forever. You've got to do a really good job at this. I'm completely behind you. I'll help.
Holy shit.
So, well, let's literally force the issue here. I get on a plane, I go back to Texas. A lot of apprehension. I didn't know what to buy. I'm like going through Target. I want to bring a bear or something. I brought both of my parents and Haley. We get in the car and we all ride down together. We meet them at a park. Harlan's kind of playing around. We meet. She does the great thing where she runs up and gives me a hug. And literally right then, I was like, this is going to be awesome. She's playing on the playground a little bit, and she trips and falls. And she keeps crying, and she keeps crying. And then me, I'm like, yeah, I think it's fine. She's going to be okay. On our way home, Candace calls, and she's like, I think I'm going to take her to the hospital. Turns out, through the x-rays, that she broke her shoulder. And I was like, man, I feel like I'm not exactly crushing this right now. I didn't. This is not hard. On the plane, thinking on the way back, if I would have known about this, would I have even joined the Army? How's that going to look in a couple of years? I got to be a good person in this scenario. And whatever that looks like, that's what I have to do. I deployed late. My team had already deployed before me, and I didn't get a chance to bond with them. We went to Afghanistan. I was literally the least drinking Green Beret in the entire country. For anybody that's ever been to Afghanistan, the planes are different. It's all combat takeoffs and combat landings. They're coming in as vertical as they can to land so that they don't get hit by RPGs as they hover really low to the ground. So that was my wake-up call to Afghanistan, is an incredibly steep dive in a massive airplane that I didn't even know that was coming. So I was like, okay, cool, I guess we're here. This is not like a large airport. It's a very makeshift runway in an area that's only held by Green Berets and a few other units. Two of the senior guys from my team come to meet me, and they're dressed in civilians, and they've got some weapons with them, and they're like,
Hey, Zach. Hey, do you have your weapons on you?
and I'm like, no, it's all in this box. That's just how they did it on this certain plane. And they're like,
Okay, cool. Sounds good. Well, listen, we got some stuff going on with some Afghans. We've got them in the car with us. We have to drop them off at this meeting. So don't talk to them. Don't make eye contact. They're in the back seat. Just sit there and just kind of go along with this thing. We'll be done in about 30 minutes.
I'm sitting in the middle, don't know how that happened, and both of them AK-47s in their hands, and they're in the entire white rope get up with these massive beards, and my two team leaders are in the front seat, in the driver's seat and the passenger seat. And we start driving, it's pitch dark, it's like 2:30 in the morning. The Afghans start talking in Dari. Our team sergeant starts yelling at them, and it's like,
Hey, you guys be quiet. Don't talk.
they start mumbling again, and it just kind of escalates, and finally, like,
You have to be quiet. You need to shut up.
so they shut up. We pull up to a building that they said we were going to be at. and my team sergeant and our senior Bravo, which is the other leader guy. They look at me and they're like,
"Hey, Zach, we got to go in here, talk to this guy real quick. Sit in here with these guys. Don't let them talk. We'll be back in just a second."
Walk out the door, shut it. So I'm sitting there in the car in the back seat with these two Afghans beside me with their AK-47s, and I have no weapons whatsoever. And I'm very uncomfortable immediately. So I look at them, I'm like, "Hey, get out of the car, let's get out." They start arguing in like all these different languages. I have no idea what's going on. And one of them reaches for his AK. And I grab him with my shoulder and kind of pin him up against the window. And things are absolutely escalating very quick. I'm reaching to see if he has a knife, to grab it. I don't know what's going on, but it's about to get super violent. And at that exact moment, all of the doors open in the vehicle, all these spotlights turn on, all of these people are around me, and it's our entire team, and these two Afghans are not Afghans. They work for another agency, and they're Americans. And it's all just a new guy prank. Welcome to Afghanistan. So it's February 8th, 2017. Cold in Afghanistan. Nothing was really different. This was just a normal day from the beginning. We woke up this morning in a hostile area that we had been sleeping at for 22 days, and it was just our team and a few other enablers. The first few weeks, we came into the village and paid a guy who owns the majority of the land. He's like a farmer. And he didn't go into the village because the village had been overrun by ISIS. But on the outskirts of the village, he had a farm with a building. And we paid him to be able to rest there for a few nights. He would constantly be having his cows come through and his chickens. He had like 10 kids. So because we have counterparts, we have Afghan special forces with us. We're like, hey, for the first 2 hours of the day, today, because we have time, we're going to help this farmer out with this property. Fix this fence, mend this, assist with the water purification. After about a few weeks of that, we moved into the village. We're clearing through the day, and when it becomes nighttime, whatever building we're in, we make the tactical decision that this is our rest overnight area. So we're going to stay in here for the night. And what we're going to do is we're going to figure out for the next 45 minutes or more what our base security defense is going to look like overnight. So then we don't get attacked at night without having some early warning system whatsoever. So nothing was really different. We drove in from where we were sleeping with these big trucks. We know there's hostiles in the area. We place it to somewhere around 40 people somewhere in the village. And we're taking sniper fire sporadically throughout the day. Got out of the trucks and we started clearing all the buildings. So myself and one of my really good friends, who's the weapons sergeant, set up on a security position, and what we're doing is making sure that there's no bad guys that come behind us and ambush us as we're clearing forward. He's got a machine gun, I've got a grenade launcher and our rifle, and we've got 2 special forces Afghans with us on security. We start to take incoming shots that were not effective. So I get on the radio and I'm like, hey guys, is anybody shooting? Do we have any outbound? On a special forces team, each person has their own specific task. Mine's communication. So talk to each other, talk to hire, use satellite communications, coordinating airspace, things like that. So at this point, everybody's like, no. And it continues. And then a few minutes later, it actually starts to get closer. And there's a distinct noise when rounds start coming close to you. They're louder and they whiz by you. So we got on the radio. We're like, hey, we're taking effective fire now. And I look over and we start to see the guys that are shooting at us. So Josh starts returning fire in that direction. I start returning fire to the guys that were closest to us, and then get on the radio. And at that time, a few guys jump up that are directly in front of us. What we didn't know at the time is they had this elaborate tunnel system that was exactly where we were. And we had no way of really knowing that. And they were traveling under these tunnels to all these different directions. Then we started taking heavy machine gun fire. We decided that we were probably getting overrun. These guys were actually attacking not just from their location, but they were moving forward on us and they were coming in quick. At about that time, we were going to get up, and there was this massive explosion. I got thrown up against a tree. I was super confused. I had no idea what was going on. One of those guys had an RPG, and it shot the RPG over my head, and it hit the wall directly behind me. I probably should have taken care of this right when I got back or while I was there. It had been 3 weeks or so after we returned. And just my very first urologist, which I've had a ton since then, was like,
hey, yeah, there's some plastic surgery that I have to do immediately.
So I'm like, okay. So we got some surgeries. After that surgery, the doctor was like,
hey, just so you know, that didn't work. And actually, it's beyond the scope of my ability. I have to send you to the specialist, the only one in the country that does this, because I can't do it.
One of the doctors was like,
hey, Zach, I got to be honest with you. It looks like you're probably going to lose your penis, and we're going to have to put something different in there.
That didn't happen, but he set me down very professionally and was like, hard truths. Zach, you're not going to be able to have children at all. This is something that your girlfriend doesn't understand because I was just talking to her. And I was like, shit. He goes, what I recommend is you go get your family and bring them in here. We make this conversation super awkward. We've got 45 minutes to discuss it. And so I'm like, shit, he's right. And this is getting pretty serious. So much like the Harlan situation where I wanted to bring my entire family in, this was the exact opposite. I didn't want to bring my family in. I didn't think that was the right play. I wanted to internalize it.
You were lying to yourself.
I was lying to everyone. I wasn't just lying to myself. I was literally lying to everyone because I didn't want it to be as bad as it is. Whether that's because my identity was wrapped up in being a Green Beret, whether that was because my identity was literally in question in my sexual ability in the future, a lot of things were running through my head, and I just wanted to diffuse it by not telling anyone about it. It was a huge burden off of my chest, to be honest with you. When I got back to the 7th group, we have a battalion surgeon who was really in charge of all this. And he called me in, which was normal after my surgeries. And he goes, Zach, I need to talk to you about something. And I was like, okay, let's go. On paper, you don't qualify for military service anymore. Those are exactly the words that he told me. You don't qualify for military service anymore. We can find another job for you somewhere in the Army, but you're not going to be a Green Beret anymore. And I was like, what? I said what, but in the back of my mind, this is already a conversation that people have been having with me, just not from doctors. So my identity as a Green Beret really left on the battlefield that day, and ever since then, it had just been going down and down and down. By the time that I reached this battalion surgeon who recommended that I actually don't stay in the military anymore and that he was going to put the paperwork in, it wasn't as hard of a blow because I didn't have to have the awkward conversation at the very beginning.
So now that you've been a Green Beret, you've been out there, you've seen the violence that's in the world, you've gotten dirty yourself, what kind of compassion do you have for people that have dealt with events like you had to deal with as a 14-year-old? You've been the victim, but you've also seen the horrors of what it looks like when you take control. What do you have to tell those people?
There's bad people in this world, and they're everywhere. And sometimes we get into our shell, and we never see that because it's a statistics game. It's just the reality of it. There's so many millions of people in this world. The portion of bad people doing bad things may not ever come across your plate. You may not ever have to see that firsthand or know someone very close that's had that situation. Looking back, after seeing what I've seen and being in the positions that I've been in, what I think the most valuable piece of information for my younger self or those individuals collectively is to stay connected to the community that you had and the community that is around you, and really love the family members. So, for example, my friends that passed away at the church shooting, their parents are really face-to-face with this tragedy more than anyone else, period. That's not how system is supposed to be set up. You're not supposed to have children and then they pass away, and they're definitely not supposed to be passing away in the manner like that. So I think that being conscious of that for a lifetime is something that as a younger person you don't recognize. That's the insight that I would provide to people. I recently got married, and we had a lot of those parents at my wedding, and it was one of the more powerful events in my life. And it was because some of them couldn't do it. A lot of them left very early into the wedding, especially during the dance that I did with my mom, some of the first dances at the wedding. And a lot of those parents filtered out, like 75%. That was the crucial moment where they left. And it was super, super sad. So what I would say to people is that you've got to remember the individuals that are involved, and you've got to hold a place in your heart. Your duty now is to be around for them, because their duty was to sacrifice whatever they sacrificed.
My telephone don't ring anymore since you left me. Well, I guess it never did. I don't know how to feel inside. Your memory makes me lonely. Well, I wish I was instead. And all the while I wonder how I could have made things better. All is lost, the wishing well, so weary and I'm so weathered. I miss the calm before the storm. I'd go and hang with a different crowd. The grief from you starts fading, but underneath it you're on my mind. I look inside this crystal ball. The sands of time start turning. I wish I was not the kind. And all the while I wonder how I could have made things better. All is lost, the wishing well, so weary and I'm so weathered. I miss the calm before the storm.
So I'm a vet that's been trying to do the conscious business thing for a while now, so I've been keeping my ears and eyes open, looking out for outlaw do-gooder types. And by that, I just mean people that are willing to cut through the bullshit to do a good thing. Combat flip-flops was on my radar early. These dudes walk into active and recovering war zones, and they make flip-flops, jewelry, and apparel from exploded ordnance. They're former Army Rangers that are willing to go to bat for peace. For every product they sell, they put an Afghan girl to school. That's cool. They make these bangles from exploded landmines, which helps clear 3 feet of space. And that's a huge problem in abandoned war zones, is these places are littered with buried ordnance. And that's dangerous for kids and families. So, to join their unarmed forces and help support vets promoting peace through great products, visit combatflipflops.com. Use the code DRAGONSBREAD and get 25% off. Combat flip-flops. Bad for running, worse for fighting. For previews of upcoming episodes, animated videos, and to download soundtracks, visit tuimedia.com. Big shout out to Burger Records. Go to our music page and you can learn more about the artists featured in this episode there. Stay true, people. Oh, and one ask on the way out. We just launched a show and reviews are really important. So if you dig what we're doing, visit iTunes, your favorite podcast platform, and just leave us a review. We'd really appreciate it.